My mother didn't call, didn't explain. She just texted Avery, "Please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding." 10 seconds later, my sister liked it, as if agreeing that the easiest way to keep the peace was to erase me. I stared at their messages in a silent office high above Seattle. My pulse suddenly loud in my ears and replied the only word that wouldn't expose how deeply it cut understood. That same night, while my sister posed under vineyard lights, Forbes posted a photo of me standing beside the Governor trophy in hand. And the real story hadn't even begun. To understand how that text ever made sense to my family, you'd have to go back to Tacoma, to a small diner off a busy road where my childhood lived between the smell of fryer oil and the soft hum of exhaustion. My dad, Jack, ran the place with hands that were always warm, always moving. My mom, Marion, worked nights in the ICU, coming home with tired eyes and a desperate need for silence. Silence she protected like oxygen. And then there was Lena, bright, effortless, the girl who made every room feel lighter just by agreeing with whatever people wanted her to be. If my mother breathed silence, Lena breathed convenience. She fit perfectly into the version of peace my mom craved. Calm, pretty, uncomplicated. I was everything else: curious, direct, intense. Apparently the kid who asked why, who wanted to understand systems and consequences, who couldn't pretend things were fine when they weren't. At our dinner table, whenever I spoke about something real schoolwork ideas, my mom's expression would tighten and she'd say, "Let's keep dinner light, Avery." She said it gently, but it bruised anyway. Lena would chime in with something cheerful, and the relief on my mother's face felt like a door shutting softly between us. It wasn't that they didn't love me, it was that loving me required effort, and loving Lena required none. Over time, the roles hardened. Lena became the easy one. I became the weight. No one said it out loud. They didn't have to. Work became the only place where my intensity wasn't a flaw. Caleb, my co-founder, and the closest thing I have to a brother, understood that my mind ran hot fast, always building. Sarah called it focus with a pulse. In Seattle, my ambition wasn't too much. It was exactly right. But every time I visited home, the air shifted. My mom would lower her voice. My dad would avoid conflict like it was a spill on the diner floor. And Lena, she floated polished by everyone's approval. When she got engaged to Eric, the wedding planning became a full-scale performance. Lena tried to play the lead, but Elaine, her future mother-in-law, held the script. Every detail had to be elegant, composed, quiet, especially quiet. So when my name came up, even lightly, even harmlessly, I saw it. The flicker of anxiety in my mother's eyes. The silent plea, "Don't stir the water. Don't disrupt the image, don't be you." And I should have known then. I should have realized that in a story built entirely on keeping the peace, someone like me would always be the first thing they cut. The months leading up to Lena's wedding felt like watching someone I loved slowly disappear behind layers of chiffon and expectations. Every time she called, her voice sounded thinner, rehearsed, shaped by someone else's hands. Elaine had opinions on everything from the floral arches to Lena's posture, and my sister absorbed them like commandments. "Ella thinks soft curls look messy in vineyard photos," Lena said once, twisting a strand of her hair between her fingers. I paused. "Do you like soft curls?" Her silence told me everything. Meanwhile, my role in the wedding was shrinking by the week. First, I wasn't in the photos. Then my speech was removed. Then any mention of my work was discouraged because, as Lena said, "It's just heavy, Avery. You know how Mom gets." I did know. I'd known since childhood. Whenever I showed emotion, excitement, frustration, conviction, my mother called it too much. Whenever Lena floated through life with agreeable smiles, it was perfect. But a new unease was growing beneath all that old hurt. It started the afternoon my family visited Seattle to finalize some wedding tasks. We sat in a small restaurant near my office. I'd barely taken my seat before Lena leaned toward me with a practiced smile. "Hey, just when you come to the rehearsal dinner, can you keep the conversation light?" she whispered. "What does that mean?" "Nothing big about climate work or supply chains or, She hesitated. Intensity. The same word my mom used when describing storms on the news. Before I could answer, Marion slid into the conversation with a soft, pleading look. "Your sister just wants a peaceful evening. These events matter to her." It landed like a verdict. My voice threatened peace. I swallowed it down the way I'd learned to. But Caleb, sitting beside me, saw the way my shoulders tensed. Later, outside the restaurant, he murmured, "That's not normal, right?" Normal or not, it was familiar. The turning point came a week later during a call with my parents. I told them about a new contract my startup was negotiating, the kind that would expand our impact statewide. Dad congratulated me warmly, but Mom cut in quickly. "Sweetheart, we're happy for you truly, but maybe save the work talk for another time. Wedding stress is high enough." There it was again. The request to make myself smaller, quieter, easier. I hung up feeling strangely hollow, and in that emptiness, something finally shifted. It wasn't anger yet. It was recognition, a quiet, steady truth rising through me. I was not a storm. I was not the problem. But my family had built their peace on the assumption that I was. And nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for how far they'd go to protect that illusion. Because the very next message from my mother would shatter whatever remained between us. The message arrived on a Tuesday, ordinary, harmless, the kind of day no one expects their family to redraw the entire map of who belongs and who doesn't. I was in my Seattle office reviewing projections with Sarah when my phone lit up. I didn't think much of it until I saw the sender, my mother. The preview alone made my stomach tighten. "Avery, please don't come. The family wants a drama-free wedding." For a second, I honestly thought it had to be a mistake. A draft sent too soon. A text meant for someone else. But then a second notification slid underneath it. Lena liked the message. A tiny blue thumbs up, but it hit like a gavel. I felt my breath leave my body in one sharp, humiliating rush. Sarah was still talking. Her voice, a distant hum. But the rest of the room fell away. I stared at the phone as if it had turned into something radioactive. Not an invitation, not a concern. Not even a conversation. Just a surgical removal. Clean, efficient, final. My thumb hovered over the keyboard for far too long. There were 100 things I could have said. Questions, anger, pleas, explanations. But every version felt like begging, and I'd done enough of that in my life. So I typed the only word that protected me from breaking open. Understood? And as I hit send, something quiet inside me cracked and then settled. Not in defeat, in clarity. This wasn't a moment of losing my family. It was the moment I realized they'd never really made space for me to begin with. I walked out onto the office balcony, the Seattle air cool and sharp against my skin. Caleb found me minutes later, concern etched across his face. "You okay?" I handed him my phone. He read once, then again, slower, angrier. "They uninvited you from your sister's wedding." I didn't answer. I couldn't yet. But he whispered the thing I couldn't bring myself to say. "You didn't do anything wrong." The words loosened something in my chest. I didn't know I'd been holding for years. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out the dark green fabric swatch. Amara had shown me during our first fitting. She'd held it up to my skin and said, "Power looks good on you." I'd laughed then, unsure, but now, feeling the weight of that text, the truth landed differently. I wasn't dramatic. I wasn't dangerous. I wasn't a threat to their peace. I simply refused to disappear. So, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I would not tell them about the award ceremony. Not the nomination. Not the governor. Not the stage. Not the moment my work would finally be seen. If my presence threatened their version of peace, then my absence would be intentional. And for once, my silence would belong to me, not to them. The night of the awards, ceremony arrived carrying the kind of electricity that feels like it's humming under your skin. Seattle was warm for summer. The sky stretched in a deep, endless blue. As I stepped out of the car in front of the state building, marble steps glowed under the uplights and people in formal wear moved toward the entrance in waves. Caleb let out a low whistle when he saw me. "Damn, Avery. That dress was made to start revolutions." It was the deep forest green gown Amara designed. Structured, powerful, the kind of thing that made me stand a little taller without even trying. Inside the rotunda buzzed with quiet sophistication. Photographers moved like shadows, capturing nominees as they checked in. I felt strangely calm, anchored by something heavier than nerves intent. A sense that for the first time in my life, I would walk into a room fully visible. Governor Hale found me before the ceremony began. "Your work has changed this state," she said with a warm, grounded smile. "Tonight is about honoring that." I thanked her, but what I really wanted to say was, tonight is the first night I'm not apologizing for taking up space. When the ceremony finally began, the crowd fell into a hush as awardees were called one by one. My heartbeat slowed into something steady, certain, and then our next honoree, Avery, CEO and co-founder of a logistics AI startup improving freight efficiency across Washington. Applause, bright lights, a path opening down the aisle. I walked toward the stage, the train of my gown brushing across the marble. The governor stood waiting at the center, the trophy in her hands, its glass edges catching the golden uplight. She smiled as I approached. "And here she is," she said, her voice carrying across the hall. The governor was handing me the trophy. The room erupted in applause, a warm, resonant sound that filled the dome above us. I felt the weight of the award in my hands, cool and solid grounding. In that moment, something inside me finally aligned. I wasn't too much. I wasn't a disruption. I wasn't the problem. I was exactly where I belonged. After photos, after congratulations, after speeches that blurred together in a haze of gratitude and disbelief. Caleb nudged me. "You need to see this," he said, holding out his phone. A Forbes notification glowed across the screen. Headline: Under 30 CEO reshape state logistics landscape. Below it, a photo of me and Governor Hale, the trophy between us. That night, while she was getting married, Forbes posted a photo of me receiving the Under 30 CEO award. Caleb read aloud like he couldn't believe it. I felt my breath catch, not from pride, but from the knowledge of what this meant. Somewhere in California, under soft lighting and curated floral arrangements, the guests at Lena's wedding were scrolling and they were seeing me. Meanwhile, at the vineyard, Lena's wedding glowed like a magazine spread. Candlelit tables, imported linens, musicians playing gentle strings in the background. Elaine, immaculate in champagne silk, floated among guests with a permanent half-smile. She'd constructed the evening like an exhibit. No rough edges, no surprises until the surprise arrived anyway. Phones began to light up across the reception. Whispered conversations rippled through the room. A senator leaned toward Marion and showed her the Forbes post. "Isn't this your daughter? What an extraordinary achievement." Marion's smile froze. "Oh yes, that's Avery. Where is she? I'd love to congratulate her." The question landed like a stone dropped in still water. Guests nearby turned. Elaine overheard. Lena stiffened. And suddenly, the one person they'd worked hardest to erase was the one name everyone wanted to say out loud. Lena excused herself from a photo line, clutching her bouquet too tightly. She stepped into a corner of the courtyard, trying to steady her breathing as the murmurs grew. Her phone vibrated again and again. Family members forwarding the Forbes link, friends tagging her in comments, a bridesmaid whispering, "Why didn't you tell us your sister was receiving an award tonight?" And Marion, my mother, was forced to repeat the lie she and Lena had crafted earlier. "She's sick. She couldn't travel." A guest pointed at the trophy in my hand. "She doesn't look sick." When the ceremony in Seattle finally ended, I slipped out of the building with Caleb and Sarah, the night cool and fragrant with cedar. My trophy felt heavier now, not in burden, but in meaning. My phone buzzed before I even reached the car, Lena calling. I let it ring once, twice. Then I answered. Her voice was sharp with panic. "Avery, everyone is talking about you." I leaned against the car door, calm in a way that felt entirely new. "I'm aware you overshadowed the entire wedding," she snapped. "Lena," I said quietly, "I didn't post anything. I didn't call anyone. I didn't even tell you where I was tonight." She hesitated, breath shaking. "Well, you should have to make your wedding easier." "Yes," she burst out. "Everything was planned to be perfect. And now the guests think we hid you." Silence stretched between us, sharp as broken glass. "You did hide me," I finally said. "You liked Mom's message. You agreed I shouldn't be there. That was your decision." "That was about keeping peace," she whispered. "No," I said, "that was about controlling the story." "Your story." "Mom's story. Elaine's story, not mine." Her voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to have people ask why your own sister isn't at your wedding?" I closed my eyes. "Do you have any idea what it feels like to be uninvited from it?" She didn't answer. For the first time in her life, Lena had run out of easy words. "Avery," she said finally, small and trembling, "everything is falling apart." "No," I murmured, looking out at the dark Seattle skyline. "Everything is finally being seen." She inhaled sharply, and I knew she felt it too. The shift neither of us could undo. You chose a version of peace that required me to disappear. And tonight I said, the world reminded you I exist. There was no anger in my voice, just truth. And truth was something my family had never learned how to hold. In the quiet days after the ceremony, the world around me settled, but my family didn't. The wedding glow dimmed fast. Questions lingered. Guests talked, photos circulated, and the story they tried to keep polished now had a crack running straight through its center. Lena called once more, not angry this time, just tired. Everything feels heavy now, she whispered. For the first time, I didn't rush to lift the weight for her. Maybe it always was, I said gently. You just weren't allowed to admit it. Meanwhile, Marion didn't reach out for nearly a week. When she finally did, she showed up in Seattle without warning. She looked smaller. Not physically, but in certainty, as if the distance between who she thought she was and who she'd become had finally caught up. I didn't understand, she said quietly. I thought keeping the peace meant keeping things quiet. It meant keeping me quiet, I replied. Not cruel, just honest. Her eyes filled, but she didn't turn away this time. I'm trying, she said. And for once I believed her. Not because she said the words, but because she didn't defend herself. As for Lena, cracks in her perfect new life were starting to show. Elaine's control grew tighter, not softer. Eric grew impatient with Lena's uncertainty. And for the first time, my sister admitted she didn't feel like herself anymore. One afternoon she texted, I think I understand now what it feels like to be shaped into something small. I stared at the message for a long moment, then replied, When you're ready to stand as yourself, I'll be here. But I won't shrink again to make room. Seattle moved on around me. Meetings, new contracts, long nights in the office. But something inside me had finally steadied. I wasn't fighting to belong. I already did. Looking back, that text didn't break me. It revealed the truth I'd been raised to ignore. I was never the source of drama. I was simply the one who refused to disappear. And if you've ever been told you're too much just for being honest, hear me clearly. You don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself to keep their peace. If this story hits home, share your experience in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.